Hello, welcome to Small Talk. Hello everyone, welcome to Small Talk. We're on location. We are in the Mission Arts Center building, and I'm here with my friend Gwynne Hunt, and we're going to talk about her latest book, Unlocking the Tin Box. So Gwynne, first of all, it's so nice to be meeting up with you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's nice to see you again too.
What inspired you to write this book?
I was always a storyteller in the family, and I used to record all the family stories and tell them over and over again. When I was 14, I stayed home from school for 3 weeks and pretended I was 6 so I could write my first novel. I knew back then that I didn't want to be a character in someone's story. I wanted to be the storyteller.
Okay.
So it's just sort of a natural thing that I've always done. I told the stories through the 30 plays that I wrote, through my poetry, and then I started to sort of think I wanted to dive a little deeper into the family history. The tin box was a tin box that my dad had, and I used to pick the lock when I was a kid, and I'd go in and find all kinds of interesting things about him, because there was always stories, and then there was always secrets, and I was trying to figure out the secrets. So that is where I sort of began.
Okay.
And then I had a lot of adventures along the way. I hitchhiked to LA, I hitchhiked across Canada. And there's just a lot of stories, and I thought maybe people would like to share in them. And I also taught creative writing for a long time, and I know that everyone's got a story to tell. Everyone's got,
yes.
And part of my mission and part of what I'm doing is I really want to encourage seniors and older people to start writing and get those stories out there, because we're not going to be here forever.
That's kind of like why I like to do interviews,
Yeah.
because everybody has a story.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about secrets. What secrets did you discover in the writing of the book?
Well, I always knew that my dad had been dishonorably discharged from the Air Force. That was a story, but his story was that he'd invited some girls to a party, and how did he know they were underage, right? And so and he ended up going to jail over all of this. It was all kind of crazy. But I wanted to discover more, so I started by writing to the RCIF, and I got his information.
Okay.
And I found out so much stuff in there about him that I didn't know. It was like I was hooked in, you know.
Right.
And same as my grandfather, Thomas. There was a story that he died from a head injury, but I discovered through going to the Royal BC Museum that he'd actually died in Essendale, and he'd actually had syphilis. So this was all stuff that I was discovering and going, oh my gosh, what didn't I know, you know?
Right.
So then I started getting interested in DNA, and I did 3 DNA tests. I always thought I was English. My mother was Swedish, and my father and all my ancestors I've been researching were English, and then I discovered that I'm a Viking. I'm Swedish and Danish.
All right.
So DNA, so he was not even my dad. He was my dad in that he brought me up.
Right, but he wasn't your biological father.
No, which was something that there was a family rumor, and I thought about it, but...
Oh, how interesting. Now, you mentioned hitchhiking to, what did you say, Los Angeles?
Los Angeles, yeah.
And what was that all about? When was that?
Well, I was at the only fish and chips on Hastings Street in Vancouver one evening, and I met this man who I thought was incredibly dashing and fabulous, and he'd been to Vietnam a couple of times, he'd been married 3 times. He also told me he was a neurosurgeon, and he sang backup for the song The Lion Sleeps Tonight. Of course, everyone knew that it was all a bunch of nonsense, but I believed everything. I was 19, it was 1969, and he invited me to come to Los Angeles. So I hitchhiked with a girlfriend. We kind of got separated in Sacramento, and how we ended up in Sacramento is a whole other story. But I got to Los Angeles, and it turned out that it wasn't really what I expected. We were living in a dump. It was kind of an odd place. There was nothing but men. It was kind of weird. We'd go out for dinners, and he'd disappear into the back. I thought he was washing dishes. Apparently it was something else I discovered later.
Wait, don't slide over that. What was that, something else?
Well, he was doing day jobs, and I thought he was, working the docks or something, but he was working the docks, but not packing fish. I mean, he was a hooker.
Oh, okay.
Male prostitute.
Right.
He was with men, and one night he brought a guy home with him, and he kissed him in front of me, and that was a huge shocker for me, because it was 1969, and nobody had come out of the closet that I knew of.
Right.
So I left. I hitchhiked home.
Right.
My girlfriend had arrived by then, and we hit the dusty trail and got back to Canada.
That's some experience. Mm-hmm. Are there any other secrets that you remember that you could just talk about, like, quickly?
There was a man in our family who was a friend. His name was Harold, and he gave me the only nice gift I ever got, this beautiful doll. Her name was Cindy, and I always thought it was kind of odd that Harold gave me this doll. It turns out Harold was my dad.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was nice that I at least knew him. And one time when I was 17, he told me he'd opened a bank account in my name, and I said, wow, why would you do that? And he said, well, I always liked you, kid. And I thought, there was no bank account. Oh. But it was kind of, there was just sort of something about that I never forgot those. Like you know, you really need to pay attention to the things that you remember.
Yeah.
Because those, you remember them for a reason.
Right.
Like of all the men who drank whiskey with my dad, why did I remember all this stuff about Harold?
Right,
You know,
yeah.
it wasn't like he was there every day. So I think that's part of it is pay attention to the things you remember, because there's usually something behind that story, right?
Yeah, right. Okay, well, we're just going to have a quick pause, okay? Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I wanna know all about you, your life's a story. I wanna know all about you, your life's a story.
We're back, and I'm here with Gwynne Hunt. So, Gwynne, what else are you doing other than writing this book?
Well, as you know, because you were in the Vagina Monologues.
Yes, I was.
I did 15 years, and we raised about $90,000 to give to women's shelters and friendship centers and all over the province. I've done produced fringe festivals and lots of theater. I wrote over 30 plays, from children's plays to doing murder mysteries. So I've always been really active in the arts community, and I had an art store in Port Alberni for 6 years. We just closed it because I decided I wanted to get back to just doing my own writing.
Right.
And so that's pretty much where I'm focusing now, is on my own writing. And I'm pretty used to promoting other people, but I don't often do that for myself.
Okay.
So it's a whole new adventure.
Right.
I figured I'm going into my 70s, so I'm going to spend the next 10 years promoting myself for a change.
Doing your, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, tell me more about some of the, you said you wrote some poetry?
Yeah, I've got a poetry book, Bruises and Bad Haircuts. That's a metaphor for my life. And that was the first thing that's the first thing I published, and I did that here in Mission.
Right.
And then I've done, I recently just did a book called The Adventures of Bob and Boo, because my youngest grandson, likes to tell stories. So we kind of put a book together, and all of my grandkids put pictures in. I have 6 grandchildren from
Right.
age 10 to 22 now. So that was one thing. And then I spent 6 years doing research on missing and murdered women in Canada, and that was Rampage, the Pathology of an Epidemic.
Yeah, could you reach that? I want to show that, because that's really important, I think.
And the picture on the cover is a painting that my daughter did, and all the names of the women are in the hair, all those white spots. She put all
Right,
the, yeah.
right. Now, I remember helping you with this, and it was
Yeah.
just so amazing.
Oh, right, you and Dawn, yeah.
Yeah, because you talked about how children were often collateral damage
Yeah.
in the missing women, and it's just list of name after name after name of women who are missing,
Yeah.
right?
I put together a list of 4,000 names. There's a lot more than that.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, that is just unreal.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that, and what else do you have there? There's the Adventures of Bob
The
and
Adventures
Boo.
of Bob and Boo. That's my grandson's drawing on the cover. And this is Bruises and Bad Haircuts.
I love this, right? So it's nice to be able to do something with your grandchildren.
Yeah.
I think that's really exciting for the
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
So what now, as you go into the second part of your life, as you're saying, into your, or the third or the fourth, whatever you want to call it, you said you're going to spend more time on doing what you want to do or promoting yourself.
Yeah.
Other than books, what does that entail? Or do you have
Oh,
anything?
I think I'm just going to work on books or more stories. You know, I want to put together all of my plays in one place, and I might, I was thinking about just doing some storytelling, but I think I'll probably focus more on a second book. I'm not really sure about what yet. But
Right.
DNA really fascinates me.
Yeah.
So I might think about something like that.
I can understand your fascination for it.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden now what's Ancestry sends me email. Oh, we found a relative, or distant relative, and what it means.
Most people don't want to be bothered, but I did meet a new cousin in Alberta, and she sent me tons of information on my Danish family, which is, I didn't have to do the research. They've got books, But it's interesting because I never felt like I belonged.
Right.
And never really felt like I belonged. And there wasn't really that creativity on my English side of my family.
Okay.
And then I discovered through my Danish side that there's authors and all kinds of writers and things. So it's really interesting.
What was your mom like?
My mom was awesome.
Yeah?
She was Swedish, but a lot of the difficulties growing up is that my mom was an alcoholic.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's how I could stay home from school for 3 weeks and write a book because mom didn't know.
Oh.
But it was only she'd be great for months, and then there'd be 3 weeks where we called it mom sick,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that was kind of the way it was. She was a really amazing stoic woman. She had 10 children, 7 of them died.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, listening to you has been fascinating, but unfortunately we're out of time.
I'm really glad to see you again, Nancy.
Oh, I'm glad to see you too. And I'm glad you were watching. Hope to see you next time. In the meantime, peace out.